Joining me to discuss, journalist Melissa Francis, financial markets analyst Mitch Feierstein, as well as chief market strategist and CEO Market Rebellion, Marc LoPresti. Good to see all three of you here.
Good to see you, Bob.
Okay. You know, I kind of felt that was a little heavy, what I wrote right there.
Just a little.
Look, I'm from that part of the country.
Sure.
So, you know, it's kind of important to me. Mark, your thoughts on everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously this has been one of the president's most effective tools in his economic toolbox. Having the ability to tariff without having to rely on Congress, which cannot even keep the government open or pass a clean funding resolution, is not the solution. The president needs to have the ability as the commander-in-chief to deal with foreign nations. And look, I think his power under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, as everybody now seems to be calling it, is clear. He has the authority to do this. He has the discretion to do this, and it is an exigent circumstance. When you have China very knowingly saying, hey, U.S., and the rest of the world, by the way, we are not going to let you have access to the rare earths that your defense infrastructure relies on. They know what they're doing, Bob, and it is an emergency.
Mitch.
Hundreds of people a day are dying from fentanyl overdoses. So this is a significant issue. So you can say that this is an emergency. I think that the president should have the powers. We have three branches of government that are very specific: legislative, executive, and judicial. Unfortunately, we have a judicial branch that's been legislating from the bench. So now we need some adults in the room to say, okay, the president does have emergency powers in this aspect and that aspect. As Amy Barrett said today, you'd have an entire mess if you tried to unwind this. It would be impossible.
Now you would,
because,
yeah.
Well, what it's used, it was, and another justice said, this is a carrot and a stick that you're using to implement a policy. So you're getting a policy implemented by putting tariffs on a country, and then they're actually using it as a tool, which is what they're doing. So it's going to be difficult, but I think that the Supreme Court will be smart enough to kick it into the weeds and make sure that none of that money is returned yet, and they might have a ruling going forward, but I think that, you know, it will be
Real
positive.
quick, what do you mean kick it into the weeds?
I think that the ruling will be, we're not going to give all that money back. We're going to say, look, in these circumstances, those tariffs hold, and the president does have the authority to do that, but Congress needs to come up with a rule, and they'll give him time.
I think that the smartest thing he's done with this is that he is using a non-lethal, non-violent weapon in our security. If you look at what he did with China, when he talks about trading tariffs and ratcheting them up or not, and then you see he announces on the same day we're going to start nuclear testing again, he's connecting those things. He's saying that as other countries militarize or let their military deteriorate, he's going to use this weapon instead of an actual weapon. And for people who hate the forever wars, and you're looking at a way to try and get China's attention, to try and get Russia's attention, to try and have an impact in the Middle East, when he uses tariffs for that instead of troops, I think you should be really happy about that.
Everybody should be. You know, no boots on the ground, no death and destruction, which we have seen break out so much under the last administration. Say they hold up. Say the Supreme Court holds this up. He gets to use tariffs. Lay out timeline, Mark, because I know Americans, they hear about all this investment. They want to see results. President Trump, when speaking to the senators today or down in Miami, he said, you know, in fact, they're going to start getting built here.
Yeah.
You got to give this time. We saw decades and decades of decline here. You got to give it a couple years here to see this come to fruition.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, Bob, as you point out, factories don't get built or erected overnight. However, the very fact that you're building those factories, the very fact that you're actually embarking on the deployment of that invested capital puts hardworking Americans to work in good, honest, paying jobs. We can accelerate the development. Look, if you're a Miami guy like me, if they can put up a Bentley skyscraper in 18 months, we can certainly get a chip fab factory up in Ohio in 18 months. If the motivation is there, and the motivation is profit, right, it can be done. And I love your correlation saying that the president is using tariffs as a non-lethal means of protecting our national security, because people, I think, do not make that connection between this being an economic issue, an economic policy issue, and a national defense issue. Guys, it is a national defense issue, 100%.
He's also taking on things that you say, oh, we can never change this because it would take forever to remake our relationship with all of these different partners. No one's in office long enough to bring the tariffs down and have a new relationship and this and that. He's using it as a very speedy weapon to change something that took decades to fall apart and put in place.
This
and
is-
look
they
at
can
also,
adjust
If
quick.
you think
Everyone-
about, if
yeah.
you think about manufacturing, right? Manufacturing and drugs are really significant,
Right.
and that's an emergency situation because China right now generates 90% of the antibiotic raw materials. So that's a national security to bring that manufacturing back to the United States, where we don't need to rely on a third country for our antibiotics and our raw materials for drugs.
It's all important. All right, I'm getting yelled at. We got to run. Very high-level conversation, though. I said I was going to have a panel of experts.
They weren't available, so you got
Yes, I got you guys and girls.
That was good.